call came from Megan, one of our field operatives. Her voice was strained, barely contained panic bleeding through her words. "Alex, something's happening. Symbols more of them are appearing in new locations, and the shadows, they're interacting with people, not just observing anymore. They're active, and some people are vanishing." My grip tightened on the phone. This was worse than I had feared. Crossing the veil hadn't just revealed their presence, it had triggered something. The shadows were evolving, spreading their reach beyond anything we'd seen before. "Keep the team safe, Megan. We're on our way," I replied, hanging up swiftly. Turning to the others, I felt the weight of urgency settle over me. "We have a problem. The shadows are breaking the pattern, and it's escalating fast. We need to act now." We arrived at the site mentioned in the report, a remote area where a symbol had appeared in an abandoned field. The pattern resembled the one we had seen in the mountains, but something felt wrong. The air seemed to pulse, and the oppressive sensation of being watched was nearly suffocating. Megan was waiting for us, accompanied by 2 other field team members. They looked visibly shaken. One of them, a young man named Eric, sat on the ground, trembling. "They spoke to me," he murmured, his voice trembling. "They said I already knew what to do, but I don't know what it means." Lena knelt beside him, speaking softly to calm him. Meanwhile, I focused on the symbol. It appeared to vibrate, emitting a faint light that grew and faded rhythmically, like a heartbeat. The shadows began to materialize around the field, their movements erratic and unsettling. These were different from before, more aggressive, their presence demanding attention. Lena and I exchanged a glance, understanding that this was no longer a passive observation. We had to act. "Remember what we've learned," Lena said, gripping her pocket mirror. "Don't fight them. Acknowledge them. Face them." I lifted my own mirror, letting the dim light from the symbol reflect off its surface. The shadows reacted immediately, hesitating for a moment before moving closer. My pulse quickened, but I held my ground, forcing myself to stay focused. "You brought us here," I said, my voice firm despite the fear gnawing at my resolve. "What do you want now? Why are you acting this way?" The symbol on the ground flared, glowing brightly as a single larger shadow emerged from the center. Its presence was commanding, like a silent leader stepping forward. "You have opened the way," the guttural voice echoed across the field. "The balance has shifted, the veil has weakened, and more will cross." Laura stepped forward, her voice steady. "Who will cross? What are you trying to tell us?" The shadow paused, as though weighing its words, before responding in a tone that dripped with foreboding. "Not all are like us. Others come, and they do not observe, they consume." The shadow's words left the group stunned. What once seemed like a controlled challenge had transformed into an escalating emergency. If other, more destructive entities were poised to cross the veil, we had to act quickly. "How do we close the veil?" I shouted over the rising wind. The larger shadow seemed to shrink, its form trembling. "You cannot close it completely, but you can stabilize it. You must return to the point of origin, the place where it all began." My chest tightened. Finch Observatory. We had known it was an epicenter, but we hadn't realized it was also the key to maintaining balance between the worlds. The car was silent, each of us lost in thought. Whatever was about to happen at Finch Observatory would decide everything. I knew the shadows were still part of the mystery, but they had become unlikely allies. They didn't want the balance destroyed, and neither did we. "We don't have much time," Lena said, breaking the silence. "If we fail, the veil won't just thin, it will be destroyed." Laura stared out the window, her gaze fixed on the dark horizon. "We have to succeed. Because if we don't, the world as we know it will be swallowed by something we can't begin to understand." The looming structure of Finch Observatory awaited us, shrouded in darkness. The shadows, silent but ever present, watched as we prepared to face the greatest test of all. Finch Observatory loomed even larger under the night sky. Its broken dome cast jagged shadows that blended seamlessly with the surrounding darkness. The air was thick, charged with an energy that made every hair on my body stand on end. The place thrummed with an almost inaudible vibration, as if something deep within was stirring awake. "We're at the eye of the storm," I muttered as we stepped out of the car. Lena carried her pocket mirror and a hastily compiled set of notes. Laura gripped the flashlight with steady hands, but her expression betrayed growing fear. Dr. Grant adjusted a heavy case of equipment, murmuring theories under his breath. "This is the epicenter," he said, gazing at the dome with a mix of awe and dread. "If we stabilize the veil here, we can prevent catastrophe. But there's no room for mistakes." The moment we entered, it was clear something had changed since our last visit. The shadows were more active, moving with purpose across the walls and floor, as though preparing the space for something monumental. The symbol in the center of the main hall glowed with a steady, ominous light, no longer fading in and out, but radiating a constant intensity. "They're waiting," Lena said, her eyes fixed on the symbol. "Not for us, but for those the veil is about to release." A low hum began to fill the air, rising in intensity. The shadows seemed to form a protective barrier around us, not aggressive but urgent, as if urging us to complete our task before it was too late. "You must act now," the leader of the shadows spoke, its voice echoing through the space without a discernible form. "The veil is breaking. The balance must be restored before the ravenous cross." Drawing on what we had learned from the field and the texts at Morton Library, we devised a plan. To stabilize the veil, we needed to synchronize the symbol's energy with our thoughts, reflected through the mirrors. The interaction of shadows, light, and human perception would be the key to restoring balance. Each of us took a position around the symbol, raising our mirrors to catch and reflect its light. The air seemed to vibrate in response, forming a pattern that resonated within our minds. "Focus," Lena commanded, her voice steady despite the growing tension. "Visualize the veil strengthening, returning to balance. We are the pillars now." As we concentrated, the shadows moved closer, undulating like waves in an unseen ocean. They began merging with the symbol, feeding its light with energy that felt as much ours as theirs. The hum reached a deafening pitch before everything stilled for a moment. Then, the weakened veil revealed what the shadows had feared. Massive, distorted figures began emerging from cracks in reality near the symbol. Their forms defied logic shifting, unnatural shapes that radiated an insatiable hunger. "They don't observe," Laura said, her voice trembling with terror. "They destroy." The shadows around us reacted, forming barriers against the invaders, but they were quickly being overwhelmed. Time was slipping away. "Keep reflecting the light," I shouted. "We have to seal the veil before it's too late." The shadows began to sacrifice themselves, throwing their forms at the ravenous entities to slow their advance. Each collision sent tremors through the floor, and the symbol's light burned brighter, as if fueled by their desperate struggle. The shadow leader reappeared, its form flickering and weakened. "You must finish the work," it said, urgency dripping from its words. "Accept what we are and complete the cycle. The balance depends on you." Lena turned to me, her face illuminated by the flickering light of the symbol. "Alex, you have to be the anchor. You were the first to recognize them. Your perception is the strongest link to them." She was right. I gripped my mirror tightly, focusing all my energy on visualizing the veil closing, the entities being repelled, and balance being restored. The symbol's light flared to an unbearable brightness and then nothing. Silence blanketed the space, stretching endlessly. When I finally opened my eyes, the symbol was dark, its power extinguished. The ravenous entities were gone, pulled back to wherever they had come from. The shadows, too, had vanished. Lena placed a hand on my shoulder, her exhaustion evident, but a faint smile tugged at her lips.
"You did it, Alex. We did it."
Laura sat on the ground, shaking but alive. Dr. Grant stared at the now empty floor where the symbol had been, muttering something about unique interdimensional interactions. Finch Observatory was silent, but the weight of what had occurred lingered in the air. The shadows had given everything to protect the balance, and though the veil was now stronger, it was also more fragile. "The work isn't over," Lena said as we walked back to the car. "We have to ensure this never happens again." I nodded, gazing up at the sky. The stars shone as they always had, but for us, the world would never be the same. We had seen what lay beyond the veil and we had survived, but we knew the shadows were still watching, and they always would be.